Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review of a horror film from Spain, Spanish language English subs, released in the year 2014, directed by Marc Sorete, and this movie is called Asmodexia. So Asmodexia is an exorcism film. You've got the Resurrection Day that is coming up in six days, and this is going to be a catastrophic event for mankind. The world is going to plunge into darkness unless this religious figure and his granddaughter can rid the demons in time. So basically what they're doing, they're going across the country, they're homeless. This young girl has a very special way about her, and the bond between her and her grandfather is very strong, and they're going around exorcising as many demons as possible in order to prepare themselves to defend themselves when the Resurrection Day comes upon them. But they're also connected to a woman in a mental hospital who has a power with tarot cards in order to try and protect the innocent from these evil forces, and she starts to believe that maybe the evil forces are overrunning the hospital, and after the hospital they will overrun the rest of the world. So she's trying her best to keep a lid on it as well, and so each day passes and then things get darker and darker, and it all adds up to a very surprising climax that I'm not going to give away. So if you want to know how this movie unfolds, please go out there and see this film for yourself. Now my thoughts on Asmodexia. As soon as I said this is an exorcism film, I can almost imagine all of you guys saying, oh no, another exorcism film, no, I'm not even going to bother watching this review. But I would strongly suggest that you keep watching this review and you actually give Asmodexia a go, because although it is a subgenre of exorcism, it does take a different approach. And I thought Marc Sorete demonstrated that he's a very risky and ambitious filmmaker, in that he's not just flogging a cash cow. He isn't making a film because, you know, the subgenre of exorcism is the trendy thing. Some of these directors, they're lazy and they'll just make a film and it just blends in with everybody else, and you think to yourself, well, that was just something I've already seen before. He didn't take any risks, and that was just there for the money, I'm sure. And, you know, they have a big title on the film, and they have, you know, a person getting exorcised, and it's basically just leeching off the efforts of the Exorcist in the 70s. That just started it all, and that was an absolute brilliant masterpiece, as you guys already know. But then ever since then, it just feels like people are just trying to imitate The Exorcist, and it doesn't really have a life of its own. But Asmodexia, it does have a life of its own. It felt like this director is a fan of this subgenre, but he also wanted to make it a little bit different. There's a lot of side plots in the film. Now those side plots, they work, and they also, you know, sometimes they don't work, sometimes they become a distraction, but the side plots is what keeps you interested, and then all of a sudden you start to feel that, hey, maybe this isn't just another exorcism film, maybe this has a little bit more to it. And I thought the characters that come into the film, once again, sometimes they're a distraction, but when different characters come into it, you start to think, well, what's this person's motive? What's this person's motive? Who is this person? You're kind of thinking to yourself, and that's what kind of distracts you from the fact that it is a lower budget type of film. Now, the movie was $500,000 to make, which by movie making standards is pretty low, but I was really impressed by the technical value of this film. Nothing ever feels like low budget. The story, as I said, is done with a lot of imagination, a lot of ideas that the director comes up with, and then the cinematography is by far the best thing about Asmodexia. I thought the hospital scenes especially were absolutely fantastic. They were scary, they were really, really haunting, just really tense, captivating, and you felt that you're inside a living nightmare. But then it goes to the other scenes, and the other scenes were really well shot, but it was the hospital scenes that really stand out, and I thought that was absolutely sublime horror filmmaking as far as the hospital scenes are concerned. Just thought it was really, really creepy, and it was just very dirty as well. So on a technical level, Asmodexia is very, very good. The acting was decent. Now, I can't really judge acting so much because I don't speak Spanish, but you don't have to speak that particular language if the acting is really bad. You notice it. But I didn't notice it in this film. So for a lower budget production, it actually felt like this director had casted fairly competent actors, and they do play their roles fairly well. My only criticism with the characters is that the grandfather is really interesting, but the rest of them, they don't feel as interesting. So you're constantly just wanting to know more about the grandfather, and when you're learning more about some of the side plots, you don't care as much. And that's my problem with the film, is that yes, it does look very, very good. Yes, the movie has a lot of ideas, but it has a little bit too much of the amount of ideas. It's just a little bit too much. It felt like he put all of his eggs in one big basket, and it was, for the some part, pretty good. But then in other parts, it feels like he drops the eggs and they just splat on the ground, and it's just a big mess, and it becomes very confusing, especially by the end of it. You think to yourself, that didn't work, this didn't work. And it's not the type of movie that makes you want to go back to fill in the clues. The clues, I don't feel that it leaves clues. It just, at the end of it, it doesn't tie up loose ends. So I thought that, yeah, this director is ambitious, but he's a little bit too ambitious for his own good. And in the end, what you get is a movie that all the ideas are very, very interesting, but you have to treat each idea on an individual merit. as a whole it doesn't quite work. And so that was my biggest disappointment. So you've got parts of the film that are really, really good, but unfortunately when it all comes time to gel together, it doesn't gel that well, and in the end what you're left with is a little bit of a confusing tale that doesn't really explain too much. And now, I constantly say, you know, you don't need everything explained to you, but unfortunately in this movie there was just a little bit too much that was unexplained. And as I said, a lot of loose ends that weren't quite tied up in the right areas. But for a lower budget horror film, I thought this was very good. As I said, it brings fresh ideas to the entire subgenre of exorcism. And if you're one of those people who is sick of it, then give Asmodexia a go, because it promises to be an exorcism film, but then, as I said, there's a little bit more to it as it goes along. The side characters, they weren't as interesting, and some of them proved to be a little bit of a distraction. I didn't really care about them, and I didn't really care about the plot. What I really cared about were the scenes in the hospital, and as I said, they were absolutely fantastic. I love the hospital scenes. But unfortunately, it felt like when it goes out of the hospital scene, it just doesn't live up to that standard. And so it's a very inconsistent film, but overall, I would still recommend it, because for a low-budget film, it is a very good-looking movie. It actually feels like it has a lot more money to it than it does. And it's a director who is willing to show an audience something different, willing to take a risk. The risks don't work, but I can applaud the fact that he had the balls to do it. So overall, for Asmodexia, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I was umming between 2.5 and 3. I'm going to give it 3 because it does look very good. There are some scenes that really, really work, but I'm not going to say it's a great film because it just doesn't make too much sense and it doesn't really gel together as a whole. But there are individual scenes that I would recommend the film for, and yeah, continue to support lower budget filmmakers, because if this guy has a bigger budget, then who knows what he could make. So go out there and see Asmodexia. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure a lot of you out there will as well. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.